There is no limit to what you can achieve or what you can accomplish. Whatever your goals are, the limit is you.
Welcome to the Producer Mindset, where we interview industry leaders about entrepreneurship, marketing, business development, and overall what it takes to run a successful business in, but not exclusive to, the real estate industry in today's age.
Welcome back to another episode of the Producer Mindset. Today we have Mr. Jay Caputo from the Caputo Group. Now, we could sit here and give you a bunch of accolades, but we're just going to get right into it. If you don't follow already Jay Caputo, make sure that you follow him. You'll probably learn how to sell real estate, buy real estate, and also how to cook, which is really cool. But we've been working together quite some time, and this is, I think, long overdue. We just released our podcast literally this year too, so it's like kind of timely too. But the reason why we wanted to bring you in here is because I think you're one of few people that, despite the market, like you just keep grinding and you just keep going, right? So before we get into all the technical real estate stuff, the first thing that we always ask our guests is, one day you were born, and the next thing you know, you find yourself in this chair sitting with us. In about 5 minutes or so, can you fill us in on what happened in between that got you here?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. Congrats on the podcast and all the success of your business. Really impressive. So in 5 minutes or less, I took a really windy path from the time I was born in Dover, Delaware, to sitting here in Northern Virginia. Lots of twists and turns, lots of successes and failures, but all of which lead you to where you are today. So it's kind of how you use the experiences that you have to inform your next decisions, in my opinion. And so we've tried to really draw from the positive, but really learn from the negatives. And so I grew up in a small town in Delaware. I was sure I was going to be a professional baseball player. And then I realized I was 5'11" with really mediocre athletic ability, and ended up dropping out of college, going to culinary school. That became my sort of life's calling when I was in college. College was an exercise in futility for me. I was just not focused on it and more interested in all of the stuff that came with being in college rather than going to class. And so I wound up in the restaurant business, which I'd worked in during high school, and had a chef take me under his wing. It was really kind of cool. Long story short, I was in culinary school sometime in the mid-90s. Ended up in San Francisco working in amazing restaurants, Boston, back to San Francisco. I settled in Philly, and then I opened some restaurants in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Had a good run, also had some serious failures. And then I had basically my whole world turned upside down when I had my son in 2015. Changed my whole perspective on life and my professional career. We moved to the DC metro area in 2017. I was still in the restaurant business, but my heart was just not there. So I decided I liked my son more than I liked my job. So I retired, and here we are.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. So going from Dover, traveling all around these different places, kind of gaining perspective on different areas and winding up here, what kind of what was the transition process like, having your son, being in the restaurant industry, and then just one day
Cold turkey.
Being unemployed?
Yeah, it was a little scary, more for my wife, I think, than for me. I was hyper-focused on making a change because I wasn't my best self in the restaurant business towards the end. And I always want to give as much as I can to what I'm doing. And so it was time for me to move on. It was so disappointing waking up in the morning and having this beautiful young boy they're so excited to see me because they hadn't seen me since the previous morning. So I would play with him in the morning, drop him off at daycare, and then I would see him tomorrow morning. And that was no fun for anybody. And so the change came at the right time. Everything happens, maybe not for a reason, but when it's supposed to happen. And once I got my real estate license, which is really way too easy to get your real estate license, you know, the bar of entry is just so low, which is why I think realtors get a bad rap a lot of times. But the bar of entry is really low. And then I was like, okay, cool, I'm a realtor. Let's go sell some houses. And then I realized it was a lot harder than just getting your license. So really very interesting transition, but amazing and fueled by all the other stuff that I've been through throughout my few years on the planet.
So you touched on a couple of things that I want to kind of like dive into before we get to the barrier of entry being way too easy for realtors. It seems to me, I would have to agree. It's very easy to get licensed and to sell houses for what's typically such a big transaction, right? But I want to go all the way back because a while back we were shooting some video together and you had brought up, you know, that you've basically been working your ass off since the beginning. And when we first started working together, you literally looked us in the eye and you were like, no one's going to outwork me. I'm relentless. And like, I remember Josh and I were like, okay, let's see. And then literally we were quiet the next moment, right? So I will take us back to when you first got into working. If I get this right, is you started working as a young boy, probably like 11, 12 years old at a grocery store at Safeway, I think.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, maybe it was an Acme, something like that. But yeah, my parents said if you want it, you got to earn it. And we didn't come from, you know, a wealthy family or anything like that. And so that's just kind of how I was taught. And so they encouraged me to get a job. I think back then the child labor laws were a little different than they are now, but I think I was able to work maybe 10 hours a week, and I would just bag groceries and push a broom and, you know, just keep the store clean. And yeah, while my friends were out playing, I was pushing a broom at Safeway, but that kind of informed my work ethic for the rest of my life. So
being so young, I think that's like the perfect age to be impressionable towards like the person you're likely to become once you're older, right? So at that point, you just said it, like my friends were out hanging out maybe in the backyard, you know, playing video games or whatever they were playing, baseball, right? You were working. What kind of values do you think, apart from the relentlessness, where you like grew to learn and kind of instill into yourself that are still true today?
For the most part, it's like appreciate what it takes to have what you want, right? You know, I think now, you know, having a 7-year-old right now is crazy because with the internet, there was no internet when I was a kid. It was rotary phones and you know, if you wanted to see your friend, you rode your bike over to their house. And so teaching my son patience right now is very, very difficult because if you want to hear a song, you push a button. If you want to watch a show, you on demand it, right? You don't watch commercials. So it's funny when I put on a show on Nickelodeon for my son and that he watches on Netflix, the previous seasons, and he's like, what is this ad? Like, I gotta wait for it to come back on, and he just doesn't get it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it's crazy. So, you know, I learned patience. You know, if I wanted a new pair of, you know, cleats for baseball, I had to work to go get it. And so, you know, it really is just the core of who I am. You know, nothing's going to be handed to you, but if you work your butt off, you can have basically whatever you want. Like, the opportunities are the same for everyone. It's what you do with the opportunity that separates people and different life paths. Like, clearly not everybody is driven to a certain level of, you know, success means something different to everyone. And so finding your own path and your own true kind of calling, that's what I look for. And fortunately for me, I was able to find two in my lifetime, right? So the first part of my professional life, being the best chef, was everything to me. And now being the best realtor, team leader, father, like those are the driving forces now.
I love it.
Hey there, really quick before we dive into today's podcast, would you do us a favor and rate and share this podcast? That would help us out tremendously for blowing this thing up. We're not really big on asking for these types of things, but we really want to expand and be able to bring on more cool people like today's guest. If you can, take a minute. It only takes a minute. That would be great. All right, let's get to it.
So in the restaurant industry, kind of going back, when was the first restaurant that you opened? And can you kind of like explain the process? So you went to culinary school, and then right out of culinary school, did you have like an apprenticeship with a chef? And like what kind of explain that process up until owning your first restaurant?
So during culinary school, the school I went to, the Culinary Institute of America, you have to do a 6-month externship in the middle. So you go to school for like 10 months, do an externship, and then go back and finish your school. And so I had gone to San Francisco. I had like $400. I had a piece of shit car, and my parents were, you know, as helpful as they could be, but essentially I had $400 to drive from Delaware to San Francisco and go to work. And so I packed all my stuff in the car. I took my $400 and I was like, please let me get to California. It took me 3 days. I just drove like 12, 14 hours a day. And gas was probably like $1.20 a gallon back then. So, but when I got there, I had a job, but I didn't have anywhere to live. And so I put myself in really specific restaurants. So the externship, I worked at this place that was like farm to table. And this is back in the 90s when that was not really super popular. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to learn that kind of technique from that chef at that restaurant, which was nationally renowned. But I lived in my car. And it was for like probably 4 of the 6 months that I lived there. I lived in my car and I wouldn't let anybody know. And I, like, after work, they would let me work. I was making $6 an hour. And so my overtime was less than the cook's regular wage, right? So they let me work as much as I wanted. And so at the end of the night, we would go out for a beer after work or something like that. And I'd be like, all right, see you guys later. And I would get in my car, I'd drive around the block, park the car, and go to sleep. And in the morning, I'd be the first one in. I'd go in the bathroom, brush my teeth, you know, wash up a little bit so I didn't smell like crap, and then went to work. And then one day a week, I would get a hotel room. It was $55 plus tax at this travel lodge that was close to the restaurant. I would sleep in a bed and take a shower, and it was like the greatest thing in the world.
That was like your spa.
I mean, it was amazing. And that was how I did it. So that restaurant was great. I went back to culinary school, and then as soon as I graduated, like, I think the car motor was on when I was getting my diploma, and I hopped in the car and moved straight back to San Francisco. By that time, all the people I had worked with at this one restaurant called the Lark Creek Inn, which is now closed, had moved to a restaurant called Farallon in San Francisco, which was just like, there was an E special on the design of the restaurant. They had spent $5 million on the interior, and they had custom designed lights that looked like sea urchins, and the bar stools were like octopus, so they had 8 legs, and there was a staircase that had 50,000 black marbles that looked like caviar. I mean, it was really over the top. And so I went back to work there. I moved to Boston, worked. So Farallon was a very high volume, fancy, high-end restaurant. It was super high volume. I moved to Boston and worked at a really, like, at that time, super high-end restaurant that was much more precise, fewer dinners every night. So it's just a little bit more attention to detail. So I put myself in those 3 places for very specific reasons. And then essentially from there, I bought a restaurant in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, called Espuma, which was my flagship there. And I basically tried to take that from, or I was able to take that from a very successful restaurant to being a James Beard nominated restaurant in Rehoboth Beach, which is kind of unheard of at that point.
What is that?
What is James Beard now? James Beard Foundation is kind of like the culinary Oscars. So they do a lot of charity work, encouraging kids to get in the food service industry and help feed underprivileged kids. And then once a year, they have the Oscars of food. And so several times I was one of the nominees for Best Chef Mid-Atlantic, but never quite made it to the finals, which was fine. You know, it was cool to be a part of. And then over the years, I had helped with opening restaurants. I consulted. I bought and opened other restaurants. It was a good run. I lost a restaurant, lost a ton of money, pissed a lot of people off. You know, had some really low lows at that point, and tried to pick myself up and move on to
What years?
greener pastures. Lost the restaurant in like '09 when financial crisis was around, and you know, I didn't have the skills that I should have had at that point. You know, I was great with one restaurant, and then I was like, oh, I can build an empire, right? And I was not prepared for that. I was a great chef and an okay businessman, but once I moved on and had other restaurants and things that took my time, everything kind of suffered. So I wasn't prepared to branch out and pay the price.
That makes sense. So I want to go back really quickly because not every day people wake up and they're like, I'm going to live across the country and choose to live in my car for the next 6 months. So what's the mentality that you have going into doing all of this? Because I think it, again, speaks to the character of being relentless, but we said it earlier, it's too easy to get into real estate and then people get slapped in the face and realize, okay, maybe it's not as easy as my exam was. All right, so what's the mentality going into it and saying, I'm going to live in my car for the next 6 months and get myself into a situation where I can be better off for some of the top restaurants and so forth?
In the food business, it's like a badge of honor to work harder than everybody else. It's like you just want to beat your friends to work, and you want to work harder and longer and stuff like that. And it's almost like this addictive thing. It's like this self-perpetuating thing, because if I see somebody else coming in earlier, then I'm going to try and come in earlier than them. And it becomes this thing where, let's say, I think at Farallon, I don't remember what they called it, but it was essentially shift pay. You got X amount of dollars. I have no idea what it was. But you got X amount of dollars to work your shift, right? And so if you showed up at 8 a.m. or at 2 p.m. when you were actually scheduled, you got the same pay. And so it was just this thing where you would constantly try and beat people in and work your butt off. And so for the Lark Creek Inn, and when I was in culinary school, I was so hyper-focused on being the best chef ever. And I'm sure I talked to some of the chefs at the school, and they encouraged me to go to this specific restaurant. And I said, I know that I had to send them a couple of letters to get accepted, because there was another place in Colorado I was considering. And when they said yes, I was like, all right, I'll do whatever I can. I don't have any money, but I'm gonna figure it out. And I did. I mean, it's like I'm all in. I'm pushing all my chips in. I'm like, I'm gonna be an amazing chef. This is a part of my journey, and I don't give a shit about anything other than that drive to be the best. And so eventually I think somebody rented me a couch in their house. I think it was the last 2 months I was out there. But once people figured out that I was living in my car, they were like, oh, I can help you out. But it's just that drive, that inner drive to constantly do better, do more, learn more, accomplish more. I don't know. It's always been there. It's still here. It's never going to go away.
So how do you translate that kind of a mindset then into what you're doing today and what you see in the marketplace from other agents and people?
It's really easy, I think, for me to apply that work ethic and that kind of grind, that hustle. I found when I was looking to get into the industry, into real estate, that most realtors that I found back then were not amazingly hardworking. Like, they talked a big game, but didn't actually follow through with what they said. And so the top producers always do. And what you realize is there's a common theme once you get to a certain level. There's a common theme. People do what they say they're going to do. But going back to the barrier of entry, like, it's really easy to get your real estate license, right? So it's easy to get licensed, but it's really hard to consistently sell houses and make a living. And that's why there's so many part-time agents and stuff like that. And that's where I think the business kind of lacks or gets bad reputation, because people aren't fully committed. And so I just said, look, I got my license. I'm gonna put my head down and figure it out. In the beginning, it was really hard because I was a chef trying to sell real estate. And it wasn't until my mind shifted to being a real estate agent and how am I going to actually produce and create a life for my family and stuff like that. Like, the reason I switched was to spend more time with my family. Well, when I actually did it and that was a possibility, well, then I had to figure out how I was going to get a paycheck, because there's no guarantees in real estate. Like, you have to actually produce in order to get paid. So there ain't no hourly wage.
Right. So we just got off a podcast a few days ago with Joe Stumpf, and he was talking about kind of the levels of a real estate agent, real estate professional, starting with surviving. Like, initially you're just surviving. It's like, okay, I got a buyer. Okay, I got a listing. Okay, now what do I do? I got this check. Just surviving, to stable, where they they have some sort of stability where they can depend on it, and then they go to successful, where they start building a team and they start operating it like a true business owner. And then the next one is sacred, I guess, or the fifth one. All right, well, let's just talk about those first three. So it seems like with your background in business, you approached real estate from the beginning like a business, rather than just being like, okay, I'm just gonna go and sell some houses and kind of have this supplement the lifestyle to spend time with my son. So did you have any mentors that helped you build business, that kind of instilled that mindset that, okay, if I want to be truly successful and actually leverage my time like I should, I need to treat this like a business, not just like me going out and grinding?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is yes. I did have some mentors, but I think I made it look easier than it was. In the beginning, I agree with that. You're trying to survive. I call it kind of spray and pray. You'll go anywhere and do anything to create transactions and create a pipeline of business. And then I realized that I didn't want to drive all over Northern Virginia, because it can take me, from where I live, it's an hour to Alexandria, and it's like, I sold a house in Dumfries, and I'm like, that's really a long way to go. And so I wanted to get more intentional. So in the beginning, it's crazy. Getting your license is the easiest part, right? But you have no idea how to create a transaction and what kind of avenues there are in real estate to create, wealth or paychecks or anything. You're just trying to sell a house or a condo or whatever. And it's a shame there's not more mentorship stuff that's formal in the beginning, because now I'm almost 4 years into this business, and I don't even recognize the guy that got into the business 4 years ago, because we're thinking on such a different level and we're producing on such a different level that it's crazy to think back and like, You know, I remember my first transaction, my first open house, my first everything, you know, and it really is crazy. And so when I shifted to a different brokerage, to Keller Williams McLean in particular, some of the agents took me under their wing, and in particular, the team lead, Amina Basic, kind of pushed me really hard to turn it into a business and stop selling houses and run a business that generates revenue through the sale of houses. And that is an amazing mind shift. So a couple of places along my path, I had a serious mind shift. In the beginning, I got my license. Well, you're an agent. No, you're a chef trying to sell houses. So when my mind shifted to being a realtor, that was a big shift in a positive direction for me, because I really stopped trying to sell and started trying to help. And that was like business altering. And then when I got into Keller Williams McLean, they really helped me start thinking this as a business. And then, you know, the rest of it kind of has grown from there.
So in the last 4 years, you know, you go from chef turned realtor to now you're running a full team. I know agents that have been doing this for 15 years and they can't hack half of what you've done. What's the biggest difference, or what's that discrepancy for you to like understand and get it and have the capacity to do it within 4 years, and people still trying to figure their shit out in this business?
So, long story short is I don't know. I don't know what they're doing wrong or what we're doing right. I can tell you what we do is we show up to work every day, we hold ourselves accountable, we work our butts off. I have an internal drive that's unmatched. If I don't know something, I'm going to figure it out. I don't want to bullshit people. I don't want to pretend I know something. You know, you're dealing with people's life savings, and this is one of the reasons I think the barrier to entry is too low, because somebody's trusting, you know, someone who's really a lot of times not very well equipped to be their fiduciary in a transaction that might be the biggest transaction of their life, at least to that date. And so, you know, I really wanted to learn the crafts, to understand the nuances of contract and why people move, and, you know, motivation. And really, when I started to think about how can I help you, you know, everything changed, you know, and it's about truly trying to help people, right? I've found that if you listen, if you ask the right questions and you listen to people, they'll tell you what they want. Then it's your job to go figure out how to help them get what they want. But, you know, there's a lot of agents out there that are fine doing, you know, I don't know, 15, 20 deals or 8 to 10 deals a year, and that's comfortable for them. You know, it's not for me, you know. And so we are constantly trying to push the envelope and do more. And when I got into this business, I think I was mid-40s, let's say. And a lot of realtors build their business through kind of word of mouth and sphere and talking to their friends at the grocery store and church and, you know, stuff like that. Well, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have 20 years to build a lasting business. Like, I plan on being on the beach in 20 years, you know, so I gotta push fast forward and figure it out. And we have been able to do that at a level that has surprised me. It certainly scares my wife a little bit, because I'm constantly like pushing for the next thing, the next new thing, next opportunity. Because one thing I realized really quickly in real estate, there is no limit to what you can achieve or what you can accomplish. Whatever your goals are, the limit is you and your systems, your processes, your attitude. That's it. You know, you're not on salary earning bonuses that's capped out at X amount. Like, you're an entrepreneur, and if you want it, it's out there to get. You just have to figure out a path that works for you.
What do you think of what's happening in the market right now? I mean, there's a lot of fear mongering. People are saying that it might crash. If it does, I think it creates, honestly, like more than anything, an opportunity. And what I like, the way that I want you to like think of your answer is, you went through 07, 09 within the restaurant business.
Yep.
You went into it one man, you came out of it a different man. What's the difference in your perspective for this market today, and what should people think about as they go forward? People within the industry in particular, that's the audience.
Yeah. So the real estate market I have found is not a nationwide thing, right? It's hyper local. And so, it's not even like real estate in Arlington is X, right? It's certain pockets of Arlington are feeling certain things. And so, the Fed has jacked up rates for the country in the past, 8 months or so, 10 months. But each area of the country feels it differently. And so we live in the DC metro area, and it doesn't affect us anywhere near as much as it may affect other rural areas across the country, because we're so insulated by the government, by so many industries being here. Amazon's building their headquarters here, or whatever, HQ2. Apple, Boeing, all these huge industries where people aren't losing their jobs en masse, and they've seen so much appreciation in the value of their home over the last 2 years. Even if they had to move and interest rates are 7%, they're not short selling their house, right? They have so much equity still in their house that they're able to, maybe not make the profit of 2020, 21, early 22, but you're still making a profit and able to feed your family and move on, because people's reasons for moving are still the same, right? So they get a different job and have to move, or they have another kid and need more space, or their kids are gone and they have to downsize, or I don't know, you just got married. Whatever the reason is still there. It doesn't change because the interest rates went up, or there may be a recession, or we may be in a recession, or the stock market, 25% off. And so we look at this as an opportunity. Like, I don't even care what the interest rates are, right? So we have shifted in a different direction to create opportunity where other people aren't even looking. And
so why is there such an emphasis on the interest rates, but people that...
Because it's clickbait, it's bullshit. It's like, it's the first thing you see when you look at the financial section of wherever you consume your news, right? Mm-hmm. Interest rates are up, Fed's doing this, inflation this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, inflation is real, right? Like, going to the grocery store costs more than it did a year ago. And those are real things, and people are feeling that a little bit, but it affects everyone differently. And it's just clickbait, right? Like, if you're an investor and you buy a property at 7% instead of 4%, you're able to deduct that 3%, the interest change, off of your taxes. And so, and you're an investor and you have a tenant that's going to pay your mortgage, like, why wouldn't you go buy property now where the appreciation has slowed down and maybe even stopped and gone backwards, and you can really find a deal where you can get a reduction in sales price and maybe some closing costs covered? Like, there's a huge opportunity right now. And unfortunately, it is one of those things where it's like the rich get richer, right? Like, if you have cash is king right now. Like, go buy houses immediately, because you're going to get a better rate of return over time than you are from the bond market. Yeah, bonds are 4% right now. In a year when the Fed drops the rates again, bonds aren't going to be 4%, right? Mm-hmm. And so real estate market over time, just like the S&P 500 over time, if you're pooping your pants right now because you lost 25% of your net worth, don't sell your stock. Just let it recover. It's going to recover. Go look at the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year yields after a 25% drop in the stock market and see what happens, right? 10-year yield is almost 200%. And so if you're able to wait it out, you've lost nothing, you've actually gained, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have cash right now, it's time to buy stocks and it's time to buy real estate. And so, I forget the original question, but I mean, it's just, there's opportunity everywhere if you are looking at things in a way that maybe the internet is not telling you to, or Fox News or CNN. Like, if you actually are committed to your craft, like, now's the time to really get serious about it and create some opportunities. And that's what we've done for our clients. And I have a list of investors and buyers and stuff right now that are going to benefit from the way that we think.
So why do you think you understand that and about 98%, I'll say like maybe even 99% of everybody else that's in real estate, they're like, oh no, the interests are rising, I'm just going to slow down, I need to
I got to pull back on my advertising. I got to...
advertising on everything, and it's like, I'm going to strong arm my lender for some Zillow money.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why is it so like protected versus it seems to me like you're like, try me. Like,
well, I mean, the reality is that generational wealth is created in downturns, right? When things bottom out, that's the time to buy, if you can. And so all the buyer, if you're a traditional buyer and you got to take a mortgage and interest rates are 7%, it can be a little scary when you read that on the internet and you hear people like, oh, the housing market this, housing market that. Like, it can be scary, but if you actually talk to a capable professional, they're going to give you guidance as to how you can use this to your advantage, right? A year ago, when interest rates were 3%, 2.5%, every house was getting 10, 15 offers, right? And so prices were getting just jacked through the roof. People were doing very unsustainable, making unhealthy economic decisions because they wanted a house. And the deal was just getting a house, right? And so they would do anything, waiving contingencies, just, knowing the flaws in the home, but buying it anyway at a price that's just not sustainable. And so now, so many of the buyers have just decided to sit out, right? Oh, I'll just rent for another year. All right, well, interest rates right now are, let's call it 7%, right? What's the interest rate on a rental?
100%.
100%, right? So what's better, 7 or 100, right? Can you refinance 100% interest rate? You cannot, because you don't own the property. Can you refinance a 7% interest rate when rates go down? Absolutely. And so just being creative about the way you approach a situation can give you a different perspective and inform your decision in a better way than just, being a sheep. And that's what I think happens is people are like, oh God, what am I gonna do? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's a movie called Dead Poet Society. You ever heard of it? Robin Williams, and all the kids were kind of drones at this private school, and Robin Williams was this crazy kind of teacher. And one of the things he made his kids do was stand on their desk and look at the room in a different perspective. And that has always stuck with me. That movie probably came out in the early to mid 90s. And it always stuck with me. Like, reality is your perspective. And if you only consume negative news, you're going to spit out negative news, right? If you're a realtor and 7%, 7%, 7%, the market's going to crash, blah, blah, blah. Well, is the market going to crash here in DMV? Probably not. Are we going to see a slow down and maybe a little dip? Possibly. There's going to be individual homeowners that are super stressed, right? Because they have to move and it's hard to sell a house right now. That is a fact. But the market here is not going to crash. The chances of that, if you ask any top producer in the area, I bet you the chances of that are like 5%. 100% it's slowed down. There's huge opportunities. But so now a lot of buyers have sat out because of the rates that they've consumed on the internet or from their agent or whatever. And so the buyer pool is so much smaller now than it was a year ago because so many people are like, oh, I'm going to rent. And so buyers now, if you're going to buy a house, not only can you probably get a price reduction, well, guess what? We're talking in the business now, like home inspections are back. Like you can get a home inspection on your house and actually understand the flaws with the home and make an informed decision whether you're going to move forward with it or not. Or financing contingencies are back. You know what we're not seeing? escalation clauses, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to overpay for a house now. Now the houses are having to be fairly priced on the market in order to get consumed by the internet, the people who are potentially buying. And, you know, there's huge opportunity for buyers right now. And so if traditional buyers are going to be sheep and just wait for interest rates to drop, I can't tell you how many times I have this conversation a day. But if that's what they're going to do, then I'm going to look for other ways to create transactions or other streams of income. And the easiest way, well, it's not easy, but for me, we've built such a network of investors over the last few years. Now there's a huge opportunity if you're an investor to buy rental properties and at a discounted price. And now you're just increasing your ability to create wealth. Like, do you know how many of the world's millionaires got their start in real estate? The percentage?
A lot.
90% of millionaires in the world. Now, being a millionaire now is not what it was 20 years ago, but 90% of the world's millionaires got their start in real estate, right? You think you're going to be a YouTube star? Like, get a grip. Buy some real estate and start building generational wealth. Like, it's a fact.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like the big message overall is just there's information, but usually that information is misinformation, or there's just a lack of information.
People read headlines, right?
Yeah.
Read the headline. Actually, you got to consume the article, or consider the source before you take it as truth.
Exactly. And I was watching a video the other day, Barry Habib kind of talking about the market and how about the listings, how many listings on market on average across the United States, and kind of just dispelling the myths of this whole the crash or and then interest rates. A really positive piece of news is, I mean, obviously you can't just take one person's word for it, but predicting in end of Q1 in 2023 sub 5 interest rates. So the time from now till then, not that much time, could refinance in the next 7 months or 6 months.
Even if it's a year, like if you did the math, like this is what we try and do with our clients, right? We get a whiteboard, we get a pen or whatever, Sharpie, and you're like, okay, look, the interest rate's 7%, and it doesn't matter what it was, right? It just matters what it is, right? And people are like, oh, rates for this, and rates are never going to be 2.5%. Like, that didn't exist in the history of the world until there was something called COVID, right? And then the Fed...
Bleep that out.
What? So interest rates are never going to be 2.5% again unless there's some sort of global issue that happens that, drives the market to shift in such an unbelievable way. I mean, the government pumped almost $5 trillion into the economy. The Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities, driving interest rates so low in order to keep the economy running over the last couple of years. Well, that is not a sustainable model, And so inflation was a natural result of that. And it's a shame that I feel the Fed missed an opportunity, and who am I, right? But I think that they missed an opportunity to see where the market took inflation naturally without taking the historical approach of just jacking interest rates up, right? So because it was an artificial sort of deflation, to me it would have been natural to allow it to run its course and see where it went, and without crushing the real estate market, they're literally trying to produce unemployment.
Yeah.
And so that's the traditional model of how you fix inflation. And I think they needed to look at this as a different kind of inflation or a different source of inflation, and they're going to miss it. But so what, right? What is that? The Fed's not listening to your podcast and going, you know what, Jay, you're right. So,
there's that one.
Maybe they are, but they're certainly not listening to me. And so what I have to do is create opportunity in the times that we're in. And, my son needs to eat, and, life goes on. And so how are we going to do it? And it's standing on a desk and looking at the industry and saying, there is opportunity here.
Throughout this entire episode, one of the common themes with you is you wanted to earn and have more time for yourself, to right, you could have that and be like by your son's side as he's growing up. Do you feel like people have, or either don't have or don't understand their own motives, their own reasons, their own why? Because it seems very clear to me that you do.
Yeah, it is very clear that I do. I think a huge part of people's growth as human beings is to really kind of be introspective and get to know yourself and like be honest with yourself. Like sometimes it's hard, right? Like you're not perfect, you're not always a great person, like you make bad decisions, do stupid stuff, and you have to sort of get to the source of why you do that and then either choose to accept it or change it, you know? And for me, my motivation is to create a better life for my son and my family. My wife's a little younger than me, so I probably will pass on before she does, and I want her to live a great life after I'm gone. And so, I don't know, I have always known my why. It's really important to just get super honest with yourself, but Keller Williams was really great in that foundation of, you know, creating a business. It's like got to be for the right reasons, and they forced me really to go deep and you know, think about things in a hard and honest way. You know, I find that has really driven me to kind of create the business we're creating, but I also find it's a shame for a lot of other humans, whether it's my business or another business, that they're missing out on what the true driving force behind their motives is. And people lie to themselves all the time, you know? Like, you say you're gonna go to the gym, but you don't, or you say you're gonna lose 5 pounds, but you don't, and you don't even try, right? You go to the gym for a couple days and you gain 2 pounds, and you're like, oh my God, this diet sucks, this gym program sucks, I'm done with it. And, you know, you're not really, you know, owning your why, right? You're not being honest with yourself, you're not putting forth maximum effort. And so, in real estate in particular, you don't have a schedule you're beholden to, right? You wake up every day, and what do you have to do? Well, you have to do whatever you want to do in order to create the life you want to live. And so you can create all the schedules in the world and reminders and this and that, but if you don't actually do the frickin' work, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So
sounds to me like when excuses run out the door, the only thing that remains is action.
That's right. That's right. I mean, your why has to be stronger than your excuses, right? So if there's something you want, like, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it for bullshit. Don't do it for, you know, Instagram likes and stuff like that. Like, that is not a deep enough reason to keep going, unless it's a means to an end, right? So
Yeah.
it can be a part of it, but who cares what other people think?
Exactly. The last thing that I personally have, and I'm really glad we're doing this because a lot of the people that watch this are people that are either getting into the industry, haven't been in a professional role before the past 3 or 4 years. So they didn't experience what something like 2008, 2009 was like. And I feel like a lot of people took 2020 or 2019, 2020 for granted, and they just kind of we're taking it as it comes and not really truly treating themselves like a business and establishing infrastructure. And so I'm really happy we're talking about this and educating everybody on really what it takes and the driving force behind it. So with the people that, let's say, are 1 year into the business and they've never experienced hard times in their professional career, what would you say to them? And coming at it from a perspective of if I was to get my license all over again in the first 6 months to a year, how would you approach it differently if you had that perspective for these newer agents?
So I think the agents that got in the business in the last year are probably going to have a hard time because, you know, deals fell into your lap accidentally. If you showed up, you probably did a few deals. And so what we try and do is teach people to hunt rather than to consume. You know, I can feed you the saying like, teach a man to fish, or give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. That's what we're trying to do, is create sustainable success for our agents. And it's not me feeding you a Zillow lead, it's you like learning how to go out and create business. So newer agents, I think either you need a mentor or you need a team, whatever is the best thing for the agent. And so again, it's like being honest with yourself. What are you really going to do to create lasting success in this business? Are you going to do the dirty work that really, you know, helps you get over the top? And that's not like doing something wrong. It's, do I want to handwrite notes? Do I want to stuff envelopes? Do I want to door knock? Am I going to make the phone calls? Am I going to follow up with my sphere? Am I going to, you know, go to networking events and stuff like that? And if you are, then go down your path and do it, because that will sustain you through a down market, I think. Now, I've never experienced a down market, but I know we're going to thrive through this because we have set up the business correctly, but we have the work ethic to shift and just put our head down and grind for our customers or clients who have become friends. You know, we had a summer barbecue for past clients and stuff, and it was unbelievable. You know, it was like people came out, and you know, I've stayed in touch with them over the years because that's what you do. Like, you become such an integral part of their life in this, like, whatever window that they're either buying or selling, or buying and selling a home. And then the transaction happens, and all of a sudden you don't talk to them 5 times a day, and you're not texting with them a bunch of times. And so to have all those people come back for that event was really cool. But it's just a testament for doing things right and putting your head down, hustling, and helping people. That's what it boils down to. But I would say get a mentor or join a team and be super honest with yourself. I think going back, if I were to do the first, it's like 4.5 months that I had a license. I did no deals at all. I might have done a rental or something, but and I wish that I had known that it's not about, you're not trying to sell something, you're trying to help people. And so if you can shift your mind to like, don't worry about the end result. The end result, if you do things right and you work your butt off, the end result will I mean, it's very productive, you know? They give you big checks when you sell homes. And so, you know, we all do it for a paycheck, but the paycheck is the result of the hard work that you do. And if you're focused on the check, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and eventually that well will run dry. People smell a salesman too far away, you know, and nobody wants to work with a salesperson. They want to work with somebody who's going to help them.
I love it.
You kind of answered my last question, to be honest, but I'll ask a different one, and this will be it for me. Well, it's a 2-part question. Number 1, as a team lead, you have your own team. What do you look for on your team members when you're looking to bring on, say, a new agent? And number 2, what do you wish was different about team leads in this industry in general?
So when we started a team, people, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? Like, I'd run businesses before, but I was like, oh, cool, we'll have a team, all right, what do we do? Just get a bunch of agents and they sell houses and you take a certain percentage of the commission and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. And all these people wanted to join because I was super successful really quickly, right? And everybody's like, I want to work with you, I want to work. And so I was like, cool, let's just accumulate agents. And then I realized, whoa, like, no, that is the exact wrong way to do this. And so we ended up contracting back down. You know, Stavros is my ride or die. He's been with me since day one. And, you know, we have such a great relationship. And And so then we started to methodically build it up. And so, not that people haven't left, but what we're looking for is sort of like-minded humans. We have this relentless approach, and it really is kind of to the core of who we are. Like, if you tell me you're looking for a diamond or a needle in a stack of needles, I'm gonna go find that needle. One way or the other, if I don't do it, somebody else is gonna do it. And so I gotta just put my head down and figure it out. There's a solution to every problem. And so we're looking for people who are kind of like-minded, who really wanna help people, even when it's hard, you know? So what if it's hard? Nobody gives a crap. Like, that's what they want. They told you, listen to them and believe them. And then when you find it, think about how happy those people are, how they're going to refer you to their friends and stuff like that. And so that's what we're looking for. I think probably team leaders approach leading a team, or some team leaders, especially new ones, the way I did. Like, oh, this is what a team is? Cool. All right, this sounds great. And don't necessarily have a plan or the right plan. And so I'm glad we realized pretty quickly that we were on the wrong path and went down a different path and kind of have built it up in the correct manner. I think that's been hugely beneficial, and we'll see that the rewards of that over the next however many years.
Very cool.
The one thing you guys didn't ask me is what's next.
What's next?
Um,
Kind of heard a little bit with the whole investment side of things, shifting strategy.
Yeah. So, that's huge, right? Man, there's some really big opportunities for our clients right now, and so we're thinking about other paths like REITs, real estate investment trusts, and stuff like that, and how we can, because we have market insight that some of our investor friends don't have. We're able to put together funds and go purchase properties, and whether it's commercial, residential, hotels, or whatever, that will produce lasting income for them. And so, like I said, cash is king. Like right now, if you have cash, like there's huge opportunities. But and we think that's an amazing way for us to service some of our clients and friends and help them achieve their goals. So that's a big part of what's next for us. And then you can cut there. But the real thing about what's next for us as the Caputo Group, and for me and my family, is we're launching our brokerage at the end of this year. So we're going to branch off from Compass and start a brokerage that we feel,
like a boutique?
Correct, a boutique brokerage that we think will put us in a better place to service our clients in the way that we want to, on our terms, with our brand. And so you don't get to choose when opportunities come along. You just have to decide if the opportunity is right for at the time. And this one came along at the wrong time. I guess traditionally from the wrong time. But the reality is it came along just when it was supposed to. And so, yeah, sometime towards the end of this year, early next year, we're gonna be Brushstroke Properties and launch in the DMV and be able to serve our clients in a different way and create a whole different level of success for our agents. And yeah, we're pretty excited about that. So
That's awesome.
Sick.
you know, I couldn't really talk about this before.
Yeah.
And I can't have this out there before I launch because Compass will kill me.
Yeah.
But it's just the right place, right time, right market, and right mindset behind it. Like, it's going to be called Brushstroke Properties. And the way I look at it is like every transaction is different. So you can have underlying principles and guiding thoughts that get you a buyer from, initial consultation to closing on a home. There's so many things that happen over the course of that time. No two transactions are alike. And so we look at it like a blank canvas. And by the end of it, when you close on your house, you'll have a full painting. And if we do it right, it'll be a work of art. And so that's what we're trying to create at Brushstroke. So we're gonna use that kind of principle with our relentless approach to take over.
I love that. Did you find the name taking mushrooms and going in your backyard?
I wish. Boy, naming anything is hard, right?
Yeah, it's so hard.
Naming a kid, naming anything is hard. And
Yeah.
so we found a great partner, a nationwide brokerage partner that operates in the background.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never know who they are. You'll never see their name. And they handle all the brokerage stuff, the hard stuff. So more agents would probably own brokerages if it weren't for all the broker shit.
Right. So much liability.
Yeah. And so they handle all of that stuff so we can focus on the stuff that we do best, and that's taking care of clients and then, growing our database and client base and stuff like that. So that was one obstacle that was removed. But so they help with the naming process and stuff. And, there's so much legal shit behind it where, you want to make sure that your name can travel. And so we gave them a series of names that went through legal vetting process and didn't pass. And so there's a lot of late nights and bourbon and, maybe some weird shit in the backyard that helped us come up with this name. And we're in the logo process right now. And it's really exciting to be able to once again go off and be the true entrepreneur that I am. And I will always bet on myself, learn from all of my failures, and use those to inform our success going forward. So
That's sick.
That is so awesome.
thank you. The whole team's coming.
That last part we'll release it later.
That's right, that's
down the
right.
road, like B2.
You'll see it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Wow. The thoughts, they're flying.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
It's crazy. We're very excited, and I'll show you some of the.
I like the REIT stuff.
Oh my God,
That's huge.
So I don't know if you guys are still filming, but you never know when an idea is gonna come to you or whatever. So I had read this article probably about 2.5, 3 weeks ago about a company that did some stupid shit, and I was like, oh, it was a one-off. I didn't really think about it. Then I was talking to a friend of mine, and we know some people who have a bunch of cash who are like, oh, the real estate market's tanking, now it's time to buy. I'm like, oh, well, how are we going to find the right opportunities for them? It's not always easy to find one-off investment properties, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes a lot of work, a lot of diligence, to make sure it's a sound investment. If you really have your client's best interest in mind, anybody can buy a property and just try and find a tenant. But if you really want a good value that's going to produce, it's hard. And so I have that kicking around in my head, not putting the original piece about the article I'd read together with it. And then I was watching the Netflix documentary on GameStop and how Reddit kind of forced the price up and people made millions, but hedge funds shit the bed, and it was just a crazy process. And I was watching that and I was like, how am I going to short the real estate market? Like, how are we going to apply these principles and just kind of drive some opportunity? And I found it, and I was like, I have a really good idea. And then I started researching it, and I was like, holy shit, like, I have a really good idea. Well, now I'm actually going to try and put it on paper and see if other people think I have a really good idea. So I put together a PowerPoint and kind of a plan. I did some research, put some spreadsheets together, and I started showing it to some of my friends, and they were like, holy shit, let's move quick because time is of the essence. Turns out it really has legs, and it will also travel. And so we are really going down this path now. So, and it's another thing with the real estate. When you get your license, you're trying to sell a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a clue how many other different avenues there are out there in real estate. It's not like just selling residential real estate. There's a million ways for you to create revenue and value that you can offer to your potential clients. And so you just have to be open to those opportunities and like listen to people, you know, keep your mouth shut, listen, learn from people who are smarter than you, and then apply it at the right time. I always tell, when I'm teaching open house classes, I tell the agents, like, when somebody comes into an open house, like they're giving you a lot of information just by walking through the door, right? Nonverbal cues are everywhere, right? Like you're staying in a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in Falls Church. Guess what? Those people are looking for a 4-bedroom house in Falls Church, right? Or the surrounding areas. They're giving you some real information. And so if you just look at it like, I'm hosting an open house, I hope I get a client, I hope I get a client, like you're missing all the information they're giving you. So if you start asking them questions about their motivation, they will tell you. But if you start verbally vomiting on them and like, oh, it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, it's 2,500 square feet, and blah, 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 the schools are great, and this and that, like, nobody gives a shit. They already knew that. They're here.
Yeah.
They showed up. That information's on the internet. So what you want is a tool belt that's full of tools of, you know, maybe you did some research on that house and realized that it's in a flood zone. And so you're going to need flood insurance, or, you know, the HVAC is 30 years old and you're probably going to have to replace the HVAC. And so you don't spew that stuff at people when they come in. You allow the opportunity to arise that you can, you know, provide value to those people, and they'll appreciate that. And so same kind of thing in all aspects, like you listen, you find the cues, and then you apply what you've learned to hopefully provide value. And in this case, I'm able to provide a serious value for my entire book of investors. And once I prove the concept here, I'm gonna take it and we're gonna travel with it. And it was crazy.
That's awesome. Great episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jay, where can we find you?
You can find us we're everywhere. We're all over the internet, and we're coming to a town near you.
There you go.
Love it.
The Caputo Group, Jay the Relentless.
That's right.
That's it.